Hello, everyone, and thank you for taking the time to review the Almaden Valley, California real estate market analysis for September of 2009. My name is Robert Whitelaw, and I'm the CEO and president of Whitelaw & Sons Real Estate Services. I'm also a member of the National Association of Realtors and a certified ePro. There's a number of ways you can get in contact with me. You can find all of my information at my website. You can find access to my weekly podcast. You can also see a player to play all of these videos and other articles I've written on real estate at www.soldbyrobert.com. If you'd prefer to contact me via email, just send those to robert@soldbyrobert.com. If you prefer to call me directly, just dial 408-852-0525. And if you'd like to chat online using AOL Instant Messenger, Google Talk, or Yahoo IM, the screen name for those is the Rebel Broker. And if you're a Skype user, the screen name is just Rebel Broker. And of course, referrals are always appreciated. If you or anyone you know is interested in buying, selling, or investing in real estate here in the Silicon Valley area, please feel free to get in touch and I'll help you out in any way I can. And finally, even if you're not interested in real estate in the areas that I serve directly, I can help you find the perfect agent for your needs anywhere in the United States. So just feel free to get in touch and I can start the process of getting you the perfect agent for your needs. Now let's go ahead and jump into the supply and demand numbers for Almaden Valley, California for September of 2009. And we'll look at the inventory numbers first. Now, the first thing you might notice about this particular graph, if you've looked at any of the others that I've done relating to other communities, now remember, this is still Santa Clara County. So this is part of a smaller area of the Santa Clara County report that I do every month. And you can see that Almaden Valley really did not get the huge spikes in inventory that other communities have. If you look at Los Gatos or if you look at Morgan Hill, the timing may be a little bit different for those communities, but really the only peak in inventory that Almaden Valley saw was in 2008. So they definitely bucked the trend of the overall county and have remained a relatively robust market all throughout this changing market. Now, of course, the market being what it is, they have seen a drop since last year, but what's interesting is, you know, the inventory numbers are still on par with when the market was really hot, 2005, 2006. In fact, as far as inventory is concerned, things were a lot more at the high end back in 2001 and 2002 for the Almaden Valley. Now, in terms of statistically, the inventory is down 29.57% from the same time last year. That's 34 fewer homes on the market in 2009 than at the same time in 2008. And that gave us a grand total of 81 homes in the market in September for Almaden Valley, California. Now let's take a look at the new listings. These are the folks who've added their homes to the marketplace. Now, a lot of you might be wondering, well, why did we see this big boost in inventory and in new listings in 2001 and 2002? Well, some of you might remember the .com situation that we went through earlier, and a lot of folks who are in the high-tech industry live in Almaden Valley. So I think, and a lot of other areas were affected in the same way, but I think this is really one of the big movers of why the market did what it did earlier in Almaden Valley. Now, as you can see, new listings are down. Now that's good news, but since this part of the market really hasn't been hit too hard, it's really just performing at a fairly normal level. I mean, if you were to look at these numbers, you really wouldn't think there's much bad news going on in Almaden Valley. Now, the new listings are down by 19.3%. That's 11 fewer listings in September of 2009 than in September of 2008. That gave us a grand total of 46 homes listed this September. Excuse me. And if we look at solds, these are great numbers for Almaden Valley. I mean, look at the sales numbers are actually rivaling the peak market periods for Almaden Valley. So sales are up 200% in Almaden Valley. That's 28 more homes sold in 2009 than in the same time in 2008, for a grand total of 42 homes sold. Now, as I like to do, I like to compare the inventory numbers to the solds numbers, sort of to get an idea of two ways of looking at the market. Now, the first way is to tell us how many months of inventory we have. And right now that stands at 1.92. So we've got about 2 months worth of inventory. That's extremely low. In fact, you would call that a seller's market when you've got things moving that quickly, to have just under 2 months worth of inventory on hand given the current sales numbers. Another way to look at this is the competition index for sellers. So for every home that sells, just about 2 homes are on the market. So that's pretty robust. That's a pretty robust marketplace. That means buyers are having to move a little bit more quickly in Almaden Valley to get some of these properties. There's really nothing to complain about if you're currently a property owner in Almaden Valley. In fact, with the way the market's going right now, this would actually probably be a pretty good time to consider selling your property, given some of the other market influences that are going on out there. I'm not so sure this is something that can last for a prolonged period of time, but historically here, Almaden Valley has managed to dodge a lot of the bullets of the market, so we'll see how things carry on as we move forward. Now, last month, this 1.92 number was at 3.13, so we did see a substantial drop in that number for this month. So, maybe we're just seeing an odd month. September is typically a good month for sales because this is when the very last of the summer season homes are finally closing escrow. These are probably homes that were in offer or in contract in August and then ended up closing in September because, as you'll see in a minute, short sales and foreclosures are not playing a huge part in the market here in Almaden Valley, which is another indicator of the health of this particular submarket. Now, to compare that to the county, the months of inventory, the number for Santa Clara County for this month was 3.06. So Almaden Valley is beating out the county by a pretty huge margin. And last month, the county ratio was 3.62. So no matter which month you're looking at, Almaden Valley is definitely outperforming the county in general. Now let's go ahead and take a look at these same numbers, but now we're just going to go straight back chronologically all the way to April of 2008. We're not going to just look at the month of September. First, we'll look at the inventory numbers. And there's quite a bit of fluctuation here. Nothing really horribly out of the ordinary. If you look at the winter time, that's obviously there's a typical dip at that point. And then people start to jump back into the market in February and March as we head into the summer months, as people get ready to take advantage of what is usually the selling season. Now, if we look at the build-up to September from last year, we can see it's a relatively the same thing. You're going from higher numbers to lower numbers. But this year, the drop in inventory was much more dramatic. So there are clearly, we'll see here in a second what else might be playing into this, but clearly homes are being taken off of the market at a quicker pace this year than last year. Last year, the market in Almaden Valley, while still okay, wasn't quite as robust as it is this year. It was a little slower last year. Now, the inventory numbers are down 13.83% from August to September. That is 13 fewer homes in inventory this month than last month. The number of homes listed, let's go ahead and take a look at that. And we can see in both of these cases, both of these numbers are trending down over the long term, and that's really the more important message, I think, to take away from this. But it's interesting to note that in September, we had a big increase in listings. In fact, a 70.37% increase. That's 19 more homes listed in September than in August. And that's a little unusual. You usually don't see... last year we did. We saw a jump in listings. But normally, as we start to head into the winter months, you start to see it dwindling. Now, see, last year we peaked in September and then dwindled down all the way into December and then recuperated in January. It's just a little unusual to see a big jump like that. Now, last year's jump was pretty good. This year's outstretched it. So I'm not real sure what's going on with folks listing their homes in September as we enter the winter months, but that's what we can see has been happening. Now, if we look at the sales numbers, we can see we've got pretty much for the last 12 months plus, because this is actually longer than 12 months. This is more like 15, 16 months. We have the highest sales in September, which is pretty amazing as well. Sales are up 40%. That's 12 more homes sold in the month of September than in August. And you can see that it's been ramping up. I mean, if you look back to November and December, where we were sort of at the bottom, very steady trend as we head up to September and reach that high point of sales. Now let's go ahead and take a look at how these sold homes break up. Where are they? Short sales, foreclosures, conventional sales? We'll start with this month's information. You can see 83% of the homes that are selling in Almaden Valley are conventional transactions. This is a pretty amazing number considering there are communities that I serve where only 40 to 50% of the properties that are selling are conventional. About 7% are foreclosures, 10% are short sales. The short sale number, we'll see here in a second when compared to last month, actually increased a bit So a few more people going into a situation where they needed to get their home short sold. So we saw a drop in the overall number of conventional sales in relation to the total number of sales overall. Is this a trend? Are we going to see more short sale things happening? Well, we'll have to wait and see. Given what the economy is like right now, I don't think it's unusual to see that happening. What's interesting about Almaden Valley is that despite what the market's been doing, I've been seeing an awful lot of properties that are selling at or above, in most cases above, what they were purchased for. So for some folks, I think you actually have to be in a pretty unique situation to find yourself in a short sale situation in Almaden Valley. Of course, timing is everything. So if you bought your home at the exact wrong time and some exact wrong things happened to you in your professional life, you could easily find yourself in that situation. But because of the way the market's been working in Almaden Valley, it's a lot less likely to occur here. Now, as far as let me give you the total numbers. As I mentioned, 42 homes sold. 4 of them were short sales. 3 of them were foreclosures. 35 of them were conventional sales. All right, now let's take a look at home prices and see what they've been doing. Now you can see obviously that the average price has been going down in Almaden Valley. It hasn't dropped nearly as much as it has in other communities. I know this to some folks looks like a pretty dramatic decrease, and while it is when you compare 2009 to 2007, Almaden Valley seems to have gotten through it pretty quickly as far as understanding the way the market was working. So we didn't end up with a huge backlog of properties, and by that I mean folks were consistently pricing in accordingly to the market in Almaden Valley. There are other areas where that didn't happen, and so they got harder hit later on. A good example of that would be Los Gatos, where I think for a while people just couldn't get the idea that the market was down, and so people were really holding on to their asking prices, which resulted in a backlog of inventory. But also the fact that there weren't a lot of short sales and foreclosures in those markets, and those were really the types of properties that were getting the most attention. So let me give you the breakdown here. The average home price was down 24.67%. From the same time last year. That was a dollar change of $299,454, so just shy of $300,000. And the average price for a home was $914,410. And you can see that we really sort of topped out right around $1.2 million back in 2007 for average price. Now the median, let's see where that is. It's pretty close to the average price this month. It was a little bit further away from it last year, where obviously homes that were selling were tending to be below the average price. We're still seeing that now, where the average home is selling below what the average price is. The median change was down to 21.82%. That was a $240,000 downward shift, with a median price sticking at $860,000. Again, like I kind of like to point out to listeners, this doesn't indicate where you really should be pricing your home. This is really more of a way of seeing where the most action is. You can see what the average is. You can see that there are more homes tending to sell below the average. If you see shifts by 5-10% in one direction or another on any of these things, don't take that as that's the number I should change my asking price by. What you really need to do is be analyzing your submarket. Even within Almaden Valley, there are submarkets. And if you really want to get your property sold as quickly as possible, under the best possible terms, you're going to need a professional real estate person to come in there and do an evaluation to determine not only what homes have sold in your area recently, but also what homes are currently in that area that are your competition. And also to understand what other communities might compete with your property. And Almaden Valley is a really good example of that. Almaden Valley is one of those places where you can find 5-acre properties or more in some parts. Now, it tends to be more in the southern end, but where would you compare that to other properties within Almaden Valley that aren't like that? And you need to have someone in there who understands that someone who is shopping in Almaden Valley isn't just shopping in Almaden Valley. They're probably shopping in West Saratoga, where there's other properties of a similar type. They might be shopping in Los Altos Hills. They also might be shopping in Morgan Hill and south of Morgan Hill, looking at properties with acreage, if that's what their goal is. And if an agent doesn't understand that that's the dynamic, that people who want acreage tend to search in those areas, they're not going to adequately price your home, and they're not going to do the right kind of job for you. All right, so let's go ahead and take a look at the highest priced single-family residential home in Almaden Valley was. That was at 7263 Glenview Drive. And that was a bank-owned property. It sold for $1,710,000. It had listed for one, or at least this is what the MLS reports, and I'll correct this for you in a minute because these numbers are inaccurate, but unfortunately these are the official numbers. As I said, sold for $1,710,000. It originally listed, according to the MLS, for $1,683,000. So, according to the MLS, this home sold more than its original asking price, which is wrong. Now, the home did sell as is at the price it sold at of $1,710,000, and according to this, it was on the market for only 5 days. Well, here's the real story. The real story is that the property originally was listed on April of 2008. And its original asking price was $2,350,000, but it was taken off of the market for a couple of months, and that allowed it to get disconnected from all this previous data. So imagine the difference. The data that's coming out is showing a 5-day on market, when in reality it had been on the market for a whole lot longer than that, over a year, that these folks were trying to get this home sold. It was originally bought in 2007. In August for $2,445,000. So, yeah, that's unfortunate. Now, what's interesting about this? It's interesting that our highest priced home is a short sale home, or excuse me, a bank owned home. Now, the lowest priced home was at 20401 Almaden Road. It sold for $505,000. Again, this is another one where the data is going to be wrong. The official data is wrong. It listed, according to this, it was listed originally for $550,000. So it only sold for $45,000 under asking price. The real number is $725,000. It was listed on March 5th of 2008 for $725,000 and was taken off of the market for just over 30 days or more. I'm not sure what the exact amount of time it was taken off the market for. But according to this, it was only on the market for 19 days. That's not the case. And it's unfortunate that we see these numbers being so incorrectly reflected. Now, the average price per square foot in Almaden Valley was $397.76. Last month's average price per square foot was $407.23. All right, let's go ahead and take a look at home prices now, just going back past months. We're not skipping year to year now, and we're going all the way back to April of 2008. Now, as you can see, the inventory numbers have been pretty steadily going down. In fact, the decrease from... I'm sorry, not inventory. The decrease in home prices. Inventory, what am I talking about? The average home price was $914,410. And the percentage price change, it was a drop from August to September of 7.66%. That was a $75,853 drop. Median price was at $860,000. That was a 0.58, about a half a percentage point drop in the median price, for a total of $5,000 money drop. Now, note, almost no change in the median. So what we're saying here is that there was really no change in what people are actually paying for houses. There was simply a shift, or sticking to paying under a certain amount. So more of we saw one house probably last month that sold for a much higher amount of money. So that skewed the average price. You can see that what people are paying or the distribution. So at the median price, if we sold 100 homes, 50 of them would be above that price of $860,000 and half of them would be below. And you're seeing that distribution hasn't changed really from month to month, despite the fact that the average price has changed. All right, let's look at how many days it's taking to get these homes sold. You can see we really peaked out there in 2007. 2001, when we had the .com problems, was also obviously a tough time for some folks, as a lot of homes hit the market. A lot took longer to get them sold. But in 2007, we sort of peaked out at 68. It was a big jump from 2006 to 2007. And then because we haven't really seen the dramatic increase in inventory, we've actually had a pretty mainstream inventory number. These are going to be a little bit more realistic than some areas. In other words, if this says 62 days, odds are that's a pretty good bet that's a real number you can stick by. The reason for that is because when you see sales increasing in times when the inventory is high, you'll often see a marked increase in the days on market because you're selling off properties that have been on the market forever. In this case, since we don't have that big of an inventory, we're tending to sell properties that have been on the market for less time. Let's see. What did we see in a change here now? The days on market was actually down 6.06% from the same time last year. That's 4 fewer days to get a home sold in 2009 than in 2008. Lowest days on market was 0. So we actually had one home that sold before it was ever even entered into the multiple listing service. The longest days on market was 447 days, with the next closest to that 328 days. So despite what I just said, we obviously have some properties that are staying on there for extended periods of time. And you'll find that often in any market, that there will be some properties where the price is just so unrealistic to what the current market conditions are that they'll just stay on there for as long as it takes until someone starts realizing what's going on and reduces the price. Now, so the homes that sold before the MLS listing, there was one property that sold before it ever even ended up on the MLS. Another 8 homes sold in 1 to 7 days. 14 homes sold in 8 to 30 days. 9 homes sold in 31 to 90 days. 8 homes sold in 91 to 180 days. And 2 homes sold in over 180 days. So those two numbers I gave you of the highest days on market numbers, the 447 and the 328, those are the only two that were above 180. So that's a big, big jump once you get over 180 days. Now, the comforting part of this news is that while those two highest numbers sound really high, 54% of the homes that sold did so in under 30 days. So I think that's pretty reasonable. I mean, having better than a 50% chance of getting your home sold in 30 days or less, that's pretty impressive. And in this market, it's hard to it's hard to get upset about that particular number. Now, from a realistic standpoint, if you're out there and you're looking at the numbers, as I've said before, if you're looking at what has sold, what your competition is, if you're being properly marketed, there's no reason why you can't expect that sort of result from you trying to get your property sold. You just got to make sure you got the right folks working for you. Now, last month, that number stood at 50%. So we've been pretty solidly being able to get about half of the properties sold in 30 days on a month-to-month basis. There's been a little variation in previous months, but overall, that's very robust and much better than what we're seeing in other parts of Santa Clara County. Now let's go ahead and take a look at days to sell just over past months. Again, this is just going straight back to April of 2008. You can see that it's been nudging up a bit. We had a pretty steady increase up until January and February. That would go kind of coincide with inventory increases that we saw. And then things started to drop, and then in January, as things started to sell off again, you'll remember the solds numbers that we looked at before. We had that number artificially jump because we sold a few homes that had been on the market for a very long time. And then ever since March, we've really been doing all right. We've seen a lot of fluctuation. A lot of that's going to depend just on how long the market, the properties have been that finally get sold. But overall, I think we're doing well in Almaden Valley, and I think these numbers reflect a pretty good market in general. I mean, it's probably the best seller's market that I'm seeing right now in the areas that I serve. The days to sell was up 40.91% from August to September. That was a 18-day increase in that 30-day period. But again, remember, you've got a 50% chance, or a little better than that, to get your home sold in 30 days or less in Almaden Valley. So that should be pretty encouraging for anyone out there who's trying to get their homes sold. And if you're trying to buy a property in Almaden Valley, if you're dead set on getting something in Almaden Valley because you like what Almaden Valley has to offer, and there's an awful lot to like about Almaden Valley, it's one of those markets where if you haven't figured it out already, you may need to move a little bit more quickly. Have all of your documents lined up. You should already have talked to a financial person. You should already have a pre-qual letter ready to go, or at least have your financial person ready to fax one off to you in pretty short notice, and be ready to move on the property that you like. I wouldn't suggest to buyers that you hesitate in Almaden Valley. The market's frankly just moving too fast there, I think, for buyers to get what they want if they're shopping for a property. All right, now let's take a look at the distribution of where the homes were. You know, it's pretty typical. A lot of stuff over at the northwest end of Almaden Valley. A lot of that probably for the commute. Some folks living in more urban areas. As you get more into the southeast of Almaden, that's where you tend to get into the bigger properties. I actually went to elementary school in Almaden Valley, and I love the area. Right over where Bret Hart Drive is, you'll see that there's a lot of new developments on Greystone Lane, where the creek used to go through. beautiful part of town. Anybody who's looking for a little bit more of a rustic feel, but still a very easy commute to all the important areas of Silicon Valley, I think Almaden's a great choice for that. And if you're willing to take on a little bit more of a commute, the extreme southeastern end down near New Almaden, I love that area. A lot of beautiful properties, 5-acre plus properties, where if you want to feel like you're really out in the woods, but you're still just a few minutes away from just about everything, it's a great choice. Anyway, I hope you've all enjoyed this presentation. As usual, here is all my contact information. I won't read through it and make you sit through that again, just putting it up again in case you would like to jot it down or take a minute to get in contact with me. Thanks for taking the time, and I appreciate it, and I will talk to you all next time.